Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon here, along with the student of the game, Kyle Nash, Andrew Glukov, as well. Bryson and Nick will be joining us a little bit later, but we have a lot to talk about. And this is the week when things really move really quick, right? So we got basketball to talk about. We're not just previewing the men's tournament. We're talking about the women who got a dub yesterday. Kyle Nash, that's great. They have a game against Memphis later today. We're recording this on Tuesday, just before noon Eastern Tuesday. We'll also talk a little bit of conference stuff with Drew, so he can clarify some things for us. And we'll also talk baseball. I had a rough weekend against Georgia Southern. And we'll recap softball as well, Kyle. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, yeah, that game hours away, Jeff.
Yeah, so by the time you hear this, it might be over already. I don't know, but we'll try and get this thing up as quickly as we can. So you can follow us, UCF Banneret _SBN, as well as on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So let's dive right in. All right, let's start with the women because they finished off obviously finished off the regular season, lost at Tulsa, but then got revenge on them on Monday, yesterday, when we're recording this. Beat them 69-53 in the first round. UCF is the 10 seed in the tournament. Tulsa's the 7. So that's an upset. And they now move on at the American Athletic Conference Championship in Fort Worth, Dickies Arena, to play the 2 seed Memphis Tigers, whom UCF lost to by just 2 points in the previous meeting earlier this season, and that was at Memphis nonetheless. So, Kyle, let's start with you, and I want to recap the Tulsa game real quick first, because we've talked about it. You mentioned it right before we hopped on, and the players mentioned it after the game. At long last, the third quarter worked out for the Knights this year.
Oh, absolutely. Not only did it work out, it might have been, I think it was tied for the second highest third quarter score in the season. At least that's what my sources tell me. And the gap there, I think it was 24-14 in that particular quarter. It just definitely sealed the game up. I mean, to that point, Tamira Poindexter, who was put on to the first conference team ahead of Destiny Thomas, who had her 13th double-double, and yet we're not talking about her as an all-conference player, but I digress. She had a big night for a while, then eventually ended up fouling out of the game. She got a tech in the first half, and then an intentional foul. So once they were without her, the offense for Tulsa was basically just completely stymied at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's one of the keys too, I thought, in that second half. Let's pour one out for Maya Burns out here because, she had been scoreless in the first half, and in the third quarter she goes off for 12 points. And, that's one of the things I think that was key to that game as well was, sometimes in tournament play, and we all know this, you got to get contributions from players who, don't normally contribute as much as normal, but the matchups work out that way because, the other team's already familiar with you. Maya Burns, like we said, we had 12 in the third, 19 for the game. And then Layla Jewett,
I was about to
20 points and 6 assists. She was fantastic yesterday.
Listen, I mean, Jeff, you pick out two. Maya's been known to have a game where she'll pop up like that. That's the kind of thing that happens. And listen, I have to credit the coaching staff for Tulsa. If UCF's coming to town and you don't account for Destiny Thomas, or at least try to, you did a bad job. And even still, she got, I think it was 11-10 or 10-11. I might have them mixed up. But the punchline being, the backcourt of UCF took advantage of that and had probably one of their best scoring stints as a group all in the year, right? We mentioned Maya. Layla Jewett coming out, which, I asked her about after being in the tournament last year as a reserve, coming on, being able to contribute this big, how she felt about that. And she went basic. I don't have the words, and just was incredibly happy to be able to contribute like that with this group, getting her chance. And then Rachel Ranke had 10. To have that much contribution in double digits from players from the backcourt, easily the best backcourt performance for the years. But you may be wondering, so what about Sierra Godbold? She didn't score a lot. No, but as a freshman point guard, tied a conference tournament record, 10 assists.
Yeah.
As a freshman doing that. Yeah, I know 2 other players did it. I doubt they were freshmen. I haven't done the research. Maybe Bryson will correct me at some point, as he tends to do. But listen, this backcourt, this was the backcourt's single best game of the year. It was the team's single best third quarter of the year. Building on that, first of all, the fact that the halftime score was what it was, despite Poindexter scoring 12 points before she was sitting on the bench with foul trouble. That was impressive enough. And it was funny watching the commentary. I'm going to channel a little bit of Eric Lopez and critique the commentary as much as they were just beaming about Tamira Poindexter. And rightly so. She's a fantastic player. She was definitely a hands-down freshman of the year pick last year. That was awesome. This year she should have been, I don't know about first all-conference team, but definitely was worthy of one of the votes, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Layla Jewett came off and she got 12 points to Poindexter's 14 in the first half, and UCF leading 30-29 was a big part of it. And like I said, the third quarter basically took it home. And again, contribution so much from the backcourt, easily their best game as a group. And of course, taking nothing away from the front court group there. Nay Hutton may not have scored a lot, but she had a ton of rebounds as well.
Yeah. So let's spin it forward to the quarterfinals now. UCF played Memphis earlier this year, lost 50-48 in overtime in a game where they went 1 for 6 in the overtime period.
On the road.
On the road, nonetheless. And listen, played a really good defensive game over this. It's really one of those games that's kind of a head scratcher because they held Memphis. This is an incredible number. They lost this game to Memphis despite holding the Tigers to 19% from the field for the game. Memphis was 15 for 79 in this game, and that included Madison Griggs, who shot 18 shots and missed 15 of them. Also, Jamira Schutz was 4 for 21 in this game for Memphis. Meanwhile, on the other side for UCF, they just couldn't. This is a game that I think they look back on. They're like, man, we beat ourselves in this game because even though they shot 29%, 16 of 55, they let Memphis hang around. UCF committed 27 turnovers in this game. That's to Memphis's 11. That's really how they lost this game, 50-48 in overtime. So they get another shot at Memphis, who finished with the 2 seed. Really surprising season for the Tigers this year. But this is a gettable game, right, Kyle?
Yeah, with all that in mind, you mentioned the turnovers, and rightly so, in that particular scenario. And I'm looking at the third quarter numbers. They weren't bad, but they certainly weren't the same as what you saw against Tulsa. But I will say this. Free throws are a thing that can kill this group at times as well, particularly free throws in the third quarter. They tend to miss them at that point if there's a time of the game. I'll mention that same Memphis game, 5 for 9, missing 4 free throws. Hey, that might have had something to do with the outcome later down the stretch. And they actually did not do their best free throw shooting as a team. The front court at one point in the game had missed all 6 that they had taken between Desto and Nay Hutton. So if they still have that room to improve to make it kind of a perfect game. And, we were here last year that free throws were a factor for Abe's team when they were when they lost to UConn in the NCAA tournament, right? So
yeah, that was a big bugaboo for them at times.
And yeah, no different with this group. That commonality, I mean, that's a basketball axiom that you got to hit those free throws. And I'll put it this way. Considering what Sierra Godbolt did yesterday with only 2 turnovers and 10 assists, I don't think that 27 turnover number is going to be a factor in this game. So I have plenty of good expectation that this is absolutely winnable.
Drew?
I agree. You look at Memphis is coming in on a 7-game winning streak, which you think, oh, that's great. They struggled against UCF, squeaked out a win. The next game at Houston, they won by 1 point, and it wasn't an impressive game. And then they had to win an overtime later at SMU. They haven't played in 6 days. So you have UCF, who played one of their most complete third quarters of the year, which has always been their Achilles heel.
You could say they're most complete, Drew. I'll let it pass.
All right, I didn't want to go all the way on there, but it was a complete game. They did their job.
I'm only saying that, Drew, because Coach would agree with you for what it's worth.
And the riding high. You've got that good energy going forward into this round. You have a team that hasn't played in 6 days, and they've had a couple of wins during that. 3 wins during that 7-win streak that weren't really all that impressive against teams that are below them. So there is opportunity to be had there, but they have to take care of the ball. Turnovers has always been an issue with this team. They're very mistake prone. However, they toned it down this last game. We see what happens when they actually are able to put it together. There's also the fact if they win this next game, it guarantees them a winning season.
It's true. Or at least an above 500 season, because they're 14-14 right now.
500 and above is a winning season. Below 500, obviously that's a losing season. So either you're losing or you're winning.
We'll say it's not a losing season because, people don't like talking about ties. I get it, Drew. But
we don't do ties in America.
No losing season if they win today.
Right. And to your point about turnovers, Drew, man, they had a stretch where they had more than 20 or 25. I forget how long it was. This was also one of those games, as you're noting here. Jeff mentioned 27, but they've also been trending down as the season's ended. And I really think it was Maya Burns after the final home game here that acknowledged, hey, this is the healthiest we've been all year, and it's showing.
Yeah. So UCF against Memphis will be Tuesday. That's tonight if you're getting this on the day when it pops into your feed on the way home. 7 p.m. That's on ESPN Plus. This is quarterfinal Tuesday in the American Championship. By the way, UCF was the only lower seed to advance out of the first round. Temple lost to Wichita State on the other side of the bracket. Of course, Houston and SMU are the 4-5. Neither of them played in the first day. On the UCF side of the bracket, Tulane knocked off Cincinnati, so they play ECU, who's the 3 seed on the other side of UCF. And then the Knights play Memphis tonight. If UCF gets by Memphis, they would likely play ECU. And I want to go back and look. So they lost a close game at the Purple Pirates in the last time out against on February 18th. They also and they lost by 14 back in early February. That was when the team was really banged up, I think, though, right, Kyle?
Absolutely. Yeah, we were missing a lot. I don't even think Ashton Verhulst was back yet. Right.
So, all right, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, okay? But this tournament, it's kind of laid out right now for UCF. If they can get by Memphis, you got a shot at likely ECU or Tulane. Let's not discount Tulane, who, by the way, UCF lost to earlier this season as well, and that was at home. But again, that was during that stretch in like mid-January when they were really struggling.
Well, and it started in November, the injuries, Jeff.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, no, you're right. But call me crazy. I think that's a winnable game either way. And then you never know. You get your shot at USF. Now, USF, let's be clear. This is their tournament to lose. Okay? Yeah. And they've, if at gunpoint, bet them, right? But again, one game situation, you just never know, especially with a team that can get hot at the right time. And a third matchup, weird stuff happens. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about the third matchup. Really quick, Ashton Verhulst did come back in that East Carolina game, but the point is there were a lot of injuries around that time. That is accurate. And I'll say, let's get there first, because any USF UCF game, well, I mean, this is true throughout a lot of sports, but when the women's teams battle each other is always a battle, at least for a while. Now, it'll either end close or somebody will start to pull away, but the first half typically is incredibly competitive. So that's a thing to account for. You stay around, suddenly you can become a game. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. But you're right. Let's get there first. And the 10 seed Knights have to beat Memphis on Tuesday, ESPN Plus, 7 p.m. Eastern time to tip off from Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. All right, switch over to the men, who, by the way, they start their first round on Thursday, which is the same day as the women's championship game. Remember how they do this, where the women's tournament plays first at Dickies in Fort Worth, and then the men's first round, because they have they have those 3 first round games, and then the women's final is that night at 9 p.m., which I think is cool. I like kind of having both teams. I always liked how, I think, was it Conference USA who does them both at the Star in Dallas, where they have 2 courts going at the same time. I just always thought that was cool. Noah Goldberg may disagree with me on that, but whatever. All right, so here's the situation laid out for the UCF men's basketball team. They got that key win to finish up the regular season on Senior Day against ECU. So right now they're at 17-13. They finished 8-10 in the conference, and they will play SMU in the first round. ESPNU Thursday, 2:30 p.m. Now, looking at the bracket for them, obviously they have to take care of SMU, a team that I forget, did I say, did they beat SMU the first time they played him?
No, they didn't, because that was the game that Michael Durr.
Oh, that's right. Or wait, no, they did beat SMU when they played. Yeah, they beat him 85-53, beat him by 32. That was all the way back on January the 8th, and that was the only time that those two teams have played. But get another shot at them here. Shorter drive for SMU. Obviously, they're kind of the home team here, because they're playing in the Dallas area, but whatever. Tournament bracket looks like this. If you're UCF, they would play, if they beat SMU at 2:30 Eastern again on Thursday, March the 9th, then they would face the number 2 seed Memphis Tigers, who it is believed they will be in the NCAA tournament regardless of their result. But let's not forget, UCF did beat them in double overtime on the home floor in Orlando, and should have beaten them. I think everyone around the program would say that in the game against Memphis. So I did have an article. There was an article, I forget who wrote it, from The Athletic, who said, who picked out 4 or 5 teams that you got to watch out for in championship weekend. They picked UCF as one of the teams that you got to watch out for because of their early season success and the fact that the Knights get to avoid Houston, who's on the other side of the bracket. So, Kyle, let me start with you. How does this tournament look to you for the men's team? What do they got to get done here so that they can, maybe make a run here? Because I think what's at stake here is not just, and Drew, you can speak to this a little bit later, getting an NIT berth, I think, may hinge upon how UCF performs in this tournament.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's not a question about the NIT point. But and you would ask me this question of what it would take to get this team to be a possible tournament team before they went on, that bit of a slump towards the end here. I mean, they're we got 4 losses in the last 6 games, but before we got to that point, you would ask a similar question of the panel: what do they need to be in the tournament to try to put themselves in a position to battle for the dance in air quotes legitimate fashion? First thing I said without hesitation that was the lowest hanging fruit was health. Well, guess what, Jeff Sharon? This is the healthiest they've been in some time. I mean, obviously they're without CJ Walker, but both CJ Kelly and Coach Dawkins have said This is the healthiest we've been in a long time. And that I can't stress enough how big a deal that actually is. And also, it's far enough away from Michael Durr returning to the lineup that they're back to keeping teams under 60 points. Remember, Dawkins last year throughout his coaching tenure has preached defense as if it were a weekly sermon. And maybe the guys who are in practice would say it's more often than weekly. Who knows? But the Michael Durr's presence, Taylor Hendricks' ability to start his own block party at any notice, over and above his what seems to be a shoe-in element of him being freshman of the conference. I think that's the hugest part, is that they're healthy, and they're a versatile group who can play defense, who can shoot from the outside. I know there's stats out there that say that they might have the worst shooting percentage in the country, but here's the thing: when this team gets hot, they can light it up pretty darn fast. Just ask Ithiel Horton.
Yeah. Drew, UCF right now 72nd in the net, and I think one of the big issues that we're seeing right now is there have been a fair number of upsets in these conference tournaments that are, and remember the rule is with the NIT is if you win your conference regular season but lose in your conference tournament, you get an automatic bid to the NIT. And that becomes a problem for UCF because all of a sudden they're starting to see, like I was looking at the NIT bracketology things that you sent me from Barking Crow and from D ratings. UCF's not in that in those NIT bracketologies anymore. And I think part of that's because it's not because they've fallen out, but other teams are kind of getting locked in, and there's a limited number of quote at large end quote NIT spots.
Yeah, and it's very true. Not only that, but you start looking at the various resumes. The net rating doesn't necessarily mean the whole thing, whether a team gets in or not. A lot of talk about Nebraska getting in. They have a very unattractive net rating compared to UCF, but they have quad one wins. They have multiple quad one wins, whereas UCF is 1-4 in quadrant one. However, let's look at what's going on in the tournament. UCF's not out of it. They need to make a right. They're on the outside looking in. Despite having the better net rating, Cincinnati's viewed more favorably. Even Tulane is viewed more favorably, despite the major difference in net. UCF 72, Tulane 99. So UCF goes, they play SMU. Obviously, that's punching down. SMU 210th. They get another chance at Memphis. That's a quad one game. Neutral territory, Memphis 34th in the net. So there's a big quad one opportunity right there. You win that, they could spring themselves back into the conversation of the NIT. But they need to make a run. And as Kyle said, they're the healthiest they've been in a long time. So you expect this SMU game to go okay before, and then you go up against Memphis, where UCF's just been able to cause the Tigers all sorts of grief.
True, let me ask you the point-blank question. If they get far enough, because I don't see a universe where they'll compete probably, but they won't beat Houston. If they get to the conference final and lose to Houston, would that be enough to get them in the NIT? If
they get to the conference final, I think they will, because that means they're still going to have to go through likely Tulane. And, even though Tulane is currently 99, that's still a top 100. That's a quad two game. So that pads the resume. It also would mean Cincinnati gets knocked down. It would mean Tulane gets knocked down. UCF gets to prop themselves up. The problem is, and as Jeff said, the regular season champion is guaranteed no less than the NIT, and you're seeing more and more in the mid and low major conferences that number one seed falling. I think we're at half a dozen already that have fallen from that number one seed. A lot of it's going on, and that just means spots are filling up. And UCF, being one of those fringe teams, needs to make a really good showing. So I think if they can make a run to the finals, they can put together a good resume to jump back into the conversation. Obviously, this is going to be in constant flux between now and Selection Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think it's this is another one of those years where I think the debate is going to start coming up where should we give automatic bids to conference regular season champs in addition to conference tournament champs? Or what you're going to end up having is that I think there are going to be some conferences that are going to seriously think about if things change, possibly getting rid of their conference tournaments altogether. And I know that, ESPN might have something to say about that because they televise all those championship games and they're fun, right? But like we talked about the possibility that there could be a minimum percentage of teams that get invited to the postseason tournament. If the NCAA men's tournament and women's tournament, for that matter, go beyond, say, 96, I think, what was the percentage, Drew? You remember that whole story? It was like 20%? I think
it was 25%.
25%, so 300 and some teams. Yeah, so you're talking about somewhere around 96 teams. That maybe you do start getting.
They said they may make an exception on basketball, just the way it plays out.
I mean, some of these teams that should have I don't blame them for going around and saying, hey man, why does our regular season not matter all of a sudden? Why does it come down to one weekend in Dothan, Alabama all of a sudden?
Well, the regular season does matter though. That is what sets you up for the at-large bids. I mean, it does matter. It's the same thing with college football fans. Oh, the regular season's not going to matter. They're expanding the playoffs. No, the regular season matters.
It's a little different with the conference tournament, though, I think is the point. But and by the way, I agree with the concept that the conference winners should matter because that's the marathon versus the sprint of a tournament. I get that part. But don't you think the fact that there's if you're a conference regular season champion, that speed bump of the tournament, and who knows, maybe somebody gets maybe your best player gets a mild injury and maybe could have played for the rest of the rounds but misses the opening game and loses. That's something to consider, right?
Yeah.
If your resume during the regular season wasn't good enough, then that's the way it is. That's why you want to get you punch up when you're the little guy and try to make those upsets. You build that resume. However, let's also think about this. In basketball, outside of the other sports, we have secondary tournaments. The NIT is run by the NCAA. It's owned by them. That's part of it. So they may be able to build exceptions in that. We have secondary tournaments for other teams that can play for championships. This is not an NCAA championship; it's an NIT championship. But they have secondary postseason options that other sports do not have.
I think what you may end up, it's true. But I think what you may end up seeing is the conferences actually kind of take matters into their own hands and do what the West Coast Conference did. Did you see that tournament bracket?
That is ridiculous. It looks like
it's a laddered bracket.
Yeah.
So they had on the first day they only have 2 games a day until the championship, and it's 5 rounds. And in the first round, 8, 9, and 7-10 play. Then the winner of 7-10 plays the 6, and the winner of 8-9 plays the 5. And then the winner of that game plays the 4. And so depending on where you finished in the conference standings, you have multiple buys.
It's a golf.
Gonzaga in the women's team, or excuse me, Gonzaga's number 1 in the women because that's the bracket I'm looking at. But the 1 and 2 seeds get buys all the way to the semifinals. They could potentially play a team that has already played 3 games before that. It's totally wild, but it's one of those things where it's hey. The West Coast Conference has said this is how we're going to preserve our best teams, right? I mean, I kind of don't blame them in that respect, right, Drew?
It's definitely outside the box thinking. The more I look at it, when I first saw it, I'm just whoa. But you know what? It's actually pretty smart. Aside from preserving your top teams, you're rewarding your top teams.
There you go.
There's no guarantees in the postseason. However, the best thing you do is get a reward for doing well. And okay, I can dig that. Plus, the little guys, the lower seeds, they want a chance to go all the way to the top. Put them through the gauntlet. Not only are they going through the gauntlet, but they have to punch up in those wins, build their own resume in the process, giving the league credibility by having a not less of a scrub go all the way through. It may be a team that had a rough season, but hey, if Pepperdine goes all the way through, they beat the 5, the 4, and the 1 of their conference. That's pretty good. But you. Well,
I think this is brilliant.
Okay,
it's so beautiful.
BYU, the number 5, they don't have to play a first-round game. San Francisco, the number 4, they don't have to play a second-round game.
This is the women's bracket, by the way, that we're looking at as an example, right? So,
well, and of course, Gonzaga, number 1, they're in the semifinals. It's because they played the best season. They should have the easiest chance because it's the most likely chance. And you don't want to overwork the players there that are likely playing in the postseason and cause potential injuries.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think this is fascinating, and you're right. It is very outside the box thinking, but to me it does the best. It's the best you can do to like solve the dilemma of, if you're a smaller conference, how do we do our best to ensure that our best team gets into the NCAA tournament? Well, stack the deck, right? I would not be surprised to see, the so-called mid-majors, end quote, adopt a format like that. It
won't work for every conference, or they'll have to modify it because they've got 10 teams. They can work with 5 games for the lowest teams, but you can't get away with 6 games in the tournament. So I mean, you're going to have to modify it a little bit. Have teams, a matchup in the second round of teams that basically get first round buys or something to that extent, and then rework it into the bracket. So I mean, it really depends on the makeup of the conference.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. Recap for UCF men's basketball. Again, they start their run in the American Athletic Conference Championship Thursday in the first round against SMU, 2:30 p.m. at Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, and that will be on ESPNU. And then once again, don't forget the women playing Tuesday at what do you say, 7 p.m.? I forgot what it was.
Yes.
Yeah, 7 p.m. for the women. So, so we'll be keeping an eye on the UCF basketball teams as they roll through. And will we play extra games after this week? I don't know. We'll find out. Keep it locked on Black and Gold Banneret for all the latest on that. Tuesday, 7 p.m. Memphis on ESPN Plus for the UCF women, by the way. All right. We get back. We'll talk a little conference realignment. There's been some rumors flying around. We'll ask Drew to break this thing down for us, and we'll also talk some baseball as well. Bryson Turner will pop in to give us an update on UCF baseball. I had a little bit of a rough patch against Georgia Southern this week on the home Diamond. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We're back. Jeff and Drew, along with Bryson and Nick here. Kyle had to dip out because he's got some business to take care of. He's a busy fellow. And let's talk a little. There's a little conference realignment news, Drew, that we got to talk. Well, maybe, I don't know. Report from CBS says the Big 12 has been in contact with the four corner schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, as the Pac-12's media rights future remains uncertain. Shahan Jayaraja of CBS with this report. This is the first, actually, I should say they confirmed it to Dennis Dodd, and because he was the originator of the story, also for CBS. So here's the situation: is that the Pac-12 is not looking too hot in terms of their media rights negotiations. There have been some rumors that they might add, at the very least, San Diego State and SMU, maybe two more. Colorado State has been rumored. Believe it or not, Boise and Fresno have been said to be not part of those possibilities. But Drew, as we're now, June 30th is always the time of year when we kind of have to look out for some things, right? Untangle this for us a little bit. It's more or less a confirmation of rumors that we've heard already. Is there smoke to this fire, or is this really just a threat that, hey, Pac-12, let's get this media deal figured out, otherwise, we're out?
Well, here's the thing, talking to the Four Corners schools, they've always been talking. Conferences and schools talk all the time. The fact that they from day one that they first said we're going west, they've been talking. The fact that the negotiation with the Pac-12 and the media rights side is still going on, it's just the conversation's changing a little bit because the clock's ticking. They're running out of time. There's still pieces to put together and stuff. So what you're seeing is now the internal turmoil of the Pac-12 starting to boil a little bit. They're getting impatient. They're getting nervous. And they're looking for contingency plans. This is smart. You'd be dumb not to start building a contingency if things really don't go your way. The fact it's taking this long is giving schools reason to wonder, are we not going to get what we want? Because if we got what we want, we would have already seen it. We would have already been able to vote on finalizing. So things are still moving. You have multiple schools that are very disgruntled. You have schools in Oregon and Washington that Washington flat out said, look, we need to make at least $35 million. We're going to have to start making cuts. So now the question is, do you start doing uneven revenue distribution? The other schools aren't going to like that. So you know what? Create contingency plans. And this has two effects. One, it tells the power brokers of the Big 12, hey, we're serious. Stop jerking us around. And two, if things don't go their way, they have a place to land.
Yeah. The Pete Thamel of ESPN reported yesterday, Monday, March the 6th, that obviously this week is the Pac-12 men's basketball tournament in Las Vegas. It's also kind of like the Pac-12 convention, if you will. There have been rumors that would the Pac-12 take its media contract to all streaming all the time, basically. A source, according to Thamel, a source told him on Sunday that a streaming-only media deal with no presence on traditional linear television is not an option for the league. A streaming platform sublicensing traditional TV is a potential path, as Apple and Amazon have been linked to the league as streaming suitors. So, could Apple buy the rights and then sell it to, Fox or something? I mean, that's what that sounds like to me.
We had that with UCF. ESPN bought the rights, sold it to CBS Sports in the first contract for the Americans. So that's not unheard of. But ESPN had been looking at the Pac-12, but at a discounted rate. Their money's tied up. That the traditional linear.
So is their inventory?
Yeah, they can find ways to squeeze the inventory, especially because it's the Pacific Coast. They can find spots in the inventory there. However,
right, but I don't think the Pac-12 wants that.
They want to land, but at least you can get 7 p.m. And then of course the 10 o'clock windows. The bigger problem is they just don't have the cash.
Right. I mean, that's the thing is if you're gonna go in on Pac-12 after dark, I mean that's fine, but you're freezing yourself out of those Eastern markets where you would get the kind of money that it seems like Oregon and Washington would want, right?
Well, they want the world, but the thing is, here's the truth. There's an East Coast bias in American sports. There always has been, there always will be.
There's an East Coast bias in everything. Why? Because there's more people in cities on the East Coast than on the West Coast.
Because the earliest the West Coast teams can realistically play is maybe like a 2:30 kickoff. 11 on the 11 o'clock range.
11:30, yeah.
11 to
Pacific.
11:30 range on the Pacific Coast. You can't go any earlier than that. So as a result, you have the Eastern time zone who has pretty much the pick of the litter, because obviously the 10 o'clock window is your after dark. They call it after dark because of the East Coast.
Yeah.
The name itself screams the East Coast bias. So there's a natural bias there. And there's viewership and numbers that support more money. The more money is just not there. Apple and Amazon are new to this party. They're not going to overextend to buy this product. ESPN doesn't have the money to do it. That's why the Big 12 jumped ahead. They knew what ESPN's limitations were, and they specifically did not go to market because of that. They're like, all right, let's make it work here. We don't want to go to market. We want to lock up with you guys. Let's make this work. And they did. I mean, it was Brett Yormark, just absolutely. He was playing chess like 3 or 4D while the Pac-12 was playing checkers. I mean, they totally out kicking their own coverage and not being able to make a move. So this all comes down to protections and contingency plans, because the last thing you want to do is be left out in the cold. So as we came up posted, Colorado board, I don't remember if it was Board of Regents or Board of Trustees, whoever their board is scheduled to meet today. And one of the topics is some legal issues and an update on the Pac-12. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's happening. Bump the brake a little bit, because he actually also posted later that the school clarified they can't make any conference moves out in a outside of a public forum. This one is not one of those. So would they be talking about potential stuff? Sure, but nothing is happening. The meeting is meeting. Thanks, Bryson. The meeting's tomorrow, but they can't make any formal moves. So I mean, we're not going to have anything between now and tomorrow really change as far as affiliation news. But as we creep closer towards June 30th, which is the deadline to make the move before you have to wait through another academic year, you're going to see something happen. It's either New Deal, everyone stays, or you got teams or programs and schools moving over.
Quick little aside, Thamel interestingly wrote, Colorado and Arizona are the odds-on candidates to jump first to the Big 12, which I think is interesting. And he said, after all, there's only so much nobility sticking on a ship that nearly everyone thinks will sink in 60 months.
Well, here's the truth.
Yeah, Colorado because they have familiarity with the Big 12 from having been there before, and then Arizona because the basketball stuff. And then I just want to bring up this one interesting quote from, of all people, Mike Tranghese, who is the Big East commissioner for 19 years, from 1990 to 2009, and was basically the guy in charge of who was piloting the plane as it crashed and eventually led to the formation of the American. Interesting quote from Tranghese, quote, "There's something I've learned about membership. Don't trust anyone. Everyone is going to do what they think is in their best interest. Everyone is going to do what they think they have to do to position their schools. That's the world college athletics has been living in for a long time," end quote.
Well, let's take it a step further with Arizona. I mean, Colorado just kind of speaks for itself. It's familiarity, and they had success in the Big 12. They have not had success in the Pac-12. So moving back, may bring more success to their programs. Arizona is learning now of how bad the elitism is out of the California schools and Oregon and Washington, and that it's actually working to the detriment of the conference. As we know, Cal and Stanford are very full of themselves when it comes to looking at lesser life forms other schools.
Mere carbon-based life forms.
Yeah, I mean, they look down. They really do. They look down. Arizona also does not want to have to cut down on with uneven revenue sharing. They feel they're one of the big dogs. And while football they've never really been the top tier program, a top tier firm. They certainly are in basketball. So they don't want to have to be stuck as a second class citizen, whereas the Oregons and the Washingtons get a bigger piece of the pie. So it makes perfect sense that they would start aligning more with the Big 12. Remember, Arizona State were the last two to join this conference. Before
when it became the Pac-10 from the Pac-8.
Utah and Colorado came. They weren't always there. They joined in the 70s. They were part of the WAC, back in the day. So it wouldn't be unprecedented to see them move. You're seeing in real time the potential destruction of this conference. And as you know, Oregon and Washington are always going to be looking over their shoulder, waiting for the Big Ten to call.
Yeah,
it happened when Kevin Warren was still there. Who knows?
They're sitting there staring at the phone.
Whoever the new, because obviously nothing's happened until a new commissioner comes along. It depends on what a new commissioner wants to do. They may have to take a lesser cut to be able to even join the Big Ten. Do it in a heartbeat, though, because the dude works the next contract.
So let me ask you this before we move over to baseball. Come on, Drew, just tell us when they're going to move and who's going to move. No. But if you had to bet your own money based on what we know right now, what do you think happens June 30th?
By June 30th, I think the four corners move.
All four of them.
I think all four will end up moving. I don't. You're going to see this thing fall apart. Reasoning is they're just not going to bring in enough to make the numbers work. It's just these schools have been working on certain budgets for a certain amount of time. They can't survive on a large scale cut, and you put it on a streaming only option. As we know, viewership on streaming only options is not going to cut it.
Not even the Mountain West does that.
No, they did the MTN and it failed. The Pac-12 network has failed. They want ESPN. They need ESPN Plus, which has much better traction than Apple TV, and then Amazon Prime. People don't log on to Amazon Prime to watch sports all that much. You're seeing it with they do it occasionally with the NFL. But that's a very niche group. You're not going to get casual people. You get casual people or fans of college football in general, who may not be fans of your conference or your schools, but just fans in general, casual fans, tuning in on linear television. They want to wait till their game starts. They got nothing going on. They put on the TV. Oh, look, it's this game. Let's just leave it on. So they're going to really hurt on their numbers if they get all or almost all streaming options. And these guys aren't stupid. They know that. But, they had a massive amount of hubris. Their pride has gotten in their way of common sense. And they're going – the death spiral's going. I don't see them making enough to really keep these schools.
Interesting. All right. Well, we continue to monitor the situation as it continues to unfold. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk baseball and softball. Bryson and Nick will be joining us to sort some things out with baseball. A little bit of an ebb for both squads. Softball's lost 4 in a row, and they were out at the Judy Garman Classic. Baseball lost 2 out of 3 to Georgia Southern to kind of come back to earth. What do they have to do to get back on the winning side of things? Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We are back on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Bryson and Nick joining yours truly. Jeff Sharon here on the show. Let's talk a little bit about some UCF baseball and softball. Bryson, I want to start with you. Baseball lost 2 out of 3 to Georgia Southern. Got off to a good start, 6-4 win on Friday. But then gave up, 11 runs in the first inning on Saturday, and then Sunday wasn't all that much better. This is coming right off of that 3-game sweep at Clemson, and then they shut out Bethune-Cookman. And, baseball's kind of funny, Bryson. Like, it has this way of, dragging you back down to earth real quick, and I think that's what happened here. I mean, they're still 8-3, but, and Georgia Southern's good. Let's not take away from them. But I think they come away with this thinking, man, that's a pretty it's not so much the fact that they lost 2 out of 3, but the fact that the pitching staff really got rocked in those last 2 games, I think, is one of the things you think that's cause for concern right now?
Well, it's not just the pitching staff in general. Let's not forget that this team has Jacob Marlowe, who has the 8th lowest whip in the entire country, who got the win, by the way, in that Friday game. No, the big thing that this team needs, and Greg Lovelady mentions it in the Sunday postgame, which you can watch on the Black Gold Banneret YouTube channel, that it's the starting pitching that needs to get better. Even in the win, the starting pitching put UCF in a hole early. The Knights offense had to score 6 unanswered runs in order to win that game on a walk-off. So even though they lost the last 2 games, that was just because the starting pitching put them in too bad of a hole early, especially in that 11-run first inning. So between Rudy Gomez, Ben Vespi, Dom Stagliano, Cameron Leiter, each of those guys need to be able to get on better starts so that way they don't have to rely on a very good UCF offense, mind you. They got double-digit hits in every 3 games. It's a great offense, but you can't rely on them to bail you out of bad starts. And so the starting pitching really just needs to get them off to better starts, and that way we can see them get wins against teams like Georgia Southern. I think by Maryland, I think we should try to see if they can shape things up by Maryland, because right now they have Troy coming to town next weekend. They do have the FSU series, but I would say as far as a weekend series goes, I would really love to see some improvement in the starting pitching by Maryland at the latest, I think.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You mentioned Troy, which, first things first, got to play UNF at home. And I'm just looking up UNF right now just to see, what they've been able to do so far this year. Well, they're 8-5. That's not so bad. They've won 4 in a row, coming off of beating 4. They actually beat Fordham 4 games in a row in Jacksonville. But then Troy, they're 11-0 this year. Have they been beating world beaters? Not really. USC Upstate, UAB, Stony Brook, Evansville, and Alabama State, but still, it's got to count for something. And when I look at Troy, they were picked 8th in the Sun Belt preseason poll, which is not great, but so far they've been doing exactly what they've been needing to do. So, chance to kind of right the ship here a little bit, but you can't overlook Troy or UNF, at least at this point, right?
I wouldn't say overlook them. I maybe came off that a little bit wrong. What I mean to say is that UCF was still able to sweep Siena and Clemson with the pitching that they have. What I kind of meant is that teams like Georgia Southern, who were like a top 16 national seed, were able to best these UCF starting pitchers. So while these UCF starting pitchers, I think, are good enough to do those things, there's a certain point where a good enough offense like Georgia Southern's is going to make them pay for all their worth. So I think it's really more of getting the starting rotation to a point where teams like those are not going to absolutely kill you. Now, the game 1 did prove that even though you could get into a hole early, this offense can fight back, but you don't want to have to rely on that every time. The key is that you want to prevent in games like games 2 and 3 where you're put into so bad of a hole that even the offense, as good as they have been with homers and such, can't get out of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, UNF is at home Tuesday, 6 p.m. at John Giuliano Park. Troy, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 6-4-1 respectively. And then next Tuesday at 6, first of 2 back-to-back against Florida State at home. This is a pretty decent home stretch for UCF. Let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games in a row at home at North Florida on March 21st, and then back home for 3 more against Maryland. UCF doesn't leave the state until April the 6th when they begin the road half of their conference slate at East Carolina. That works out. I'd say that works out pretty favorably for UCF going forward, at least in this position. So we shall monitor that going forward. All right, UCF softball, 1-4 in the Judy Garman Classic. That's out in Fullerton, California, playing some really tough competition. They were in every game but one. Beat Fresno State 1-0, lost to Michigan 2-0. Played UCLA right down to the dirt. Number 2 UCLA, I should mention, lost that game 2-1. 8-2 loss against Loyola Marymount, and then an 8-6 loss at Cal State Fullerton. They resume play, UCF does, softball-wise, in Gainesville on Wednesday against number 8 Florida. Nick, I want to get you in here to talk a little bit about softball. I think that, how do you kind of evaluate this? Because, like we said, that's some pretty good competition that they played, and it was out west, so, long road trip. But I get the feeling that Coach Bear's probably like, we just didn't quite have enough pitching to get us over the hump. The pitching was good, especially against UCLA, I thought, but just not enough. Still trying to figure out that staff, right?
Yeah, 100%. You got to be a little frustrated. There are like small victories, like you said. They pitched really good against UCLA. They're one of the best teams in the country. And look, if you're going to lose to them by like 1 run, on the one hand, that sucks because it's like you're so close to beating them. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what, whatever, fair enough. But yeah, it's really just that though. They still just have not figured out pitching yet. And there are nights I will watch the pitching and the entire defense in general, and I am just impressed. But then there are nights you just don't see it. To me, it's just inconsistency. Their pitching is just so up and down, and they just, like you said, they haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
Like, it's not panic time yet, but at the same time, I am like, you got to figure this out soon because, they're 2 games below 500 right now, so you want to start seeing a little bit more of a winning streak go on here.
Yeah, you want to get that trend moving up by the time conference play rolls around, which, as I'm looking at the softball schedule right now, is right around the corner. March 24th. Basically 2 weeks from now, they open with Wichita State. But this week at Florida, and then 5 games at home against the likes of Toledo, 2 games against the Rockets, one on Friday night, one on Saturday afternoon. Saturday evening against Kennesaw State, Sunday morning against North Dakota, and Sunday afternoon against Kennesaw. And that's before they play a doubleheader next Tuesday against Rutgers at home. So, step down, let's be honest, okay? Step down in competition from what they were playing this past weekend. So perhaps a chance to kind of get things underway. And one little stat I wanted to get out there, too. Even though they were 168th in the country in team ERA at 3.98, they are tied for 35th in triples and tied for 44th in home runs per game, and also 63rd in the country in slugging percentage at 449 as a team. So the one thing that's good is that the hitting has actually kept them, relatively afloat so far, at least at this point in the year, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like the hitting itself, like on offense, that's really impressed me. There's so many hitters that have, maybe feel comfortable. Like I said, it's not panic time yet. That's partly because of why. Like it's kind of similar to what we were just saying with baseball. Like there are times where the offense can kind of like make up for the pitching struggles, but you can't rely on that always. But yeah, if the hitting keeps doing what they're doing, then I'm comfortable. Again, it's just pitching that needs to improve a little bit.
Yeah, a big shout out, by the way, to Chloe Evans, who is right now 17th in the country in doubles. She's been fantastic. And 6th in the conference in homers. And Savannah Adams and Jada Cody tied for 3rd in the conference with homers with 4 right now on the season. And Jada 4th in the conference in runs scored per game which is right around one. You're getting one run a game for out of Jada Cody because she just makes things happen. Not just at the plate, but on the base paths. But there's a layout for UCF softball with these 5 games coming up this weekend. And then, of course, playing Big Ten opponent Rutgers a week from when we're recording this, Tuesday the 14th, is when UCF plays a doubleheader against the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. Okay, and then last but not least, Bryson, we'll wrap up with what you were mentioning, women's golf. This is starting to shape up to be a rather historic season for UCF women's golf as they make some more headlines from their most recent tournament. But give us the recap. What happened?
So, first thing, the rain actually shortened the tournament to 2 rounds. That ended up happening in Gainesville. They were playing in the Gators Invitational up there. But have a tournament for true freshman Pimpissa Sisutham. Her nickname is Sandwich, actually. So Sandwich shot a 62 in her second round in tournament. That's the first 62 in program history, just not long after Anna Nordfors shot the first 64 and 63. And she ended up winning the entire tournament with a 3-hole playoff with Florida's Macy Filler. She ended up finishing 7 under for the tournament after shooting an 8 under round. She is the 3rd different women's golfer to win an individual tournament this season, alongside her countrywoman Tanrata Pitton and Anna Nordfors at the UCF Challenge. Before Tanrata Pitton joined this team a couple seasons ago, there were only 3 UCF women's golfers that ever won individual tournaments: Kristen Putman, Liz Early, and Ashley Holder. This team now holds half of the UCF women's golfers to ever win an individual event, which is absolutely mind-boggling. And let's not forget their performance as a team either. They were finished in a tie for second place at the tournament at 7 over par with Mississippi State, just 4 strokes back of host Florida, who finished at 3 over, by the way. So don't worry about the scores there. The course just played pretty tough this weekend. But this women's golf team is really shaping up to be historic, like you said, Jeff. And they're going to be back in action real soon because they're going to be traveling up to Kiowa Island, South Carolina for the Briars Creek Invitational that starts this coming Monday.
Yeah. All right. So that's so far. I mean, I love it when we win at Florida's tournament. It's fantastic. By the way, men's golf also, they have their tournament coming up, Sea Palms Invitational at St. Simon's Island, Georgia. So both golf teams kind of making the mid-Atlantic road trip this coming weekend. So that should be fun. Hosted by Western Carolina, the Sea Palms Invitational. So, and that's their third to last tournament for the American Athletic Conference. Track and field indoors NCAA. Renaya Jones has been selected for the NCAA indoors. Nick, you actually are our resident. You and Bryson, I think, are like competing for our actual track and field experts here because, for all the hard work that Bryson's been doing, and it's been great. Nick, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I know he doesn't like to brag, but Nick actually competes in NCAA track meets as you're an unattached distance runner. Is that right?
Hoping to be. A couple of weeks ago, I'm part of the run club here at UCF. We went up to Emory-Riddle University in Daytona, and we competed against some schools, a couple D2, a couple NAIA, and
don't let his modesty fool you, folks. Nick is out there with his UCF, tank out there.
I am bringing that up because I don't know what I qualify on there because I don't know if that was like an official meet or not. But I'm still trying to convince the president of our run club to enter me in the upcoming Black and Gold Invitational. I will get destroyed. I am going to point that out. But you know what? I just want to do it just because. So,
okay. Well, here's why I bring this up: is you are like analyst level expert at track and field as far as we're concerned, especially in the distance, but also for the sprints as well. Renaya Jones in the NCAA championships. I want to get both of your takes on this, Nick. What kind of shot does Renaya have here? She's going to be competing in the 60-meter hurdle. She was third in the nation last year. She, what's her PB right now? I think 8.08. So what are the odds here that she can bring home the gold?
She's got a shot. I mean, you mentioned it. She's had success in the event the past few years. She's arguably one of the best track athletes that UCF has ever had. I wouldn't be shocked if she won it. I definitely think she can be I would really expect a podium finish out of her. I really think that much of her, but I think she's got a good shot at winning it all.
Bryson?
So she'll be coming up against one of her old national level nemesis in track and field in Masai Russell from Kentucky. She also qualified for this event. One thing I've noticed out of Renaya is that she hasn't had the fastest times that I saw from her indoor last year that got her onto the podium. That's something that I'm definitely keeping an eye on. I'm not underestimating her, by the way. I think there is a school of thought in track and field that you try to save your best for last. And so who knows? I think we could very well see Renaya Jones save her best for last in this indoor conference championship. But with that said, she is going to have to face Masai Russell, who has been a thorn in her side nationally in all of her NCAA championship appearances. But to see her appear here really and consistently too, because that she has now competed in 2 outdoor and 2 indoor championships, which I don't think we've seen in the Dana Boone era of this track and field team. So already making it here, Renaya Jones has already cemented the fact of why she is among the pantheon of historic female athletes here on this campus. Now it's just a matter of, okay, let's see what she can do at the national level and see if she can finally take down Masai Russell.
Yeah. By the way, Masai Russell and Renaya Jones, you mentioned this last year, Bryson. Renaya came in third behind Russell by 4 1/1000ths of a second in the 60 hurdles. Grace Stark, I mean, yeah, Nick, you're like, that's basically 1 inch. And Grace Stark was the winner from Florida. She's a sophomore. She actually set the NCAA record in the 60 hurdles at 7.78. So yeah, last year, so that gives you an idea. Like Renaya was at 7.947, Masai was at 7.943, and they were still almost 0.2 of a second behind Grace Stark. But that's kind of the times that you're looking at. How much do you improve, as you know, Nick, how much do you improve from meet to meet, especially over, not just in the short term, but in the long term? So, boy, this is going to be fun to watch. Nationals will take place this coming weekend, March 10th through the 11th, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The 60-meter hurdle prelims are at 6:55 Eastern on day 1. The finals will be at 6:40 Eastern on day 2, and those will be on ESPN+. All right, boys, I think we got to wrap it up for now. By the way, Nick, you mentioned Alex Ward at the NFL Combine. We took a look at that earlier, so he will await his next opportunity. And one last little thing that Nick and I are obviously paying close attention to. Pretty cool this weekend seeing Terrence Plummer, Rennell Hall, and Adrian Killens together in the XFL at the Guardians Renegades game out in Dallas. 3 UCF alumni getting together out there. Nick has his XFL UCF recap up here today, as well as the Guardians come back home for one more game for their second home game this coming weekend, and we will be there covering that as well as everything else on UCF Sports. Thanks again to all the guys. Bryson's at It's Bryson Turner. Nick is at Nick Porcelli 2, the number 2. Kyle at VSOTG for the student of the game, and Drew at Statboy Drew. I am at Jeff_Sharon. Don't forget Eric at Eric Lopez Elo, and we are collectively at UCF Banneret_SBN. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest on UCF sports, including all of our post-game interviews, and this is going to be obviously critical this week with UCF men's and women's basketball in the conference tournaments as well. If you listen to this podcast and you subscribe, we thank you. Make sure you leave us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then also, if you don't Well, make sure you do. Tell some friends as we head into our last one. We're still waiting on the whole rebrand thing. I've been monitoring things with the powers that be at SB Nation, but we'll keep you updated as soon as they update us on what's going to happen with our branding and obviously our feed. But our feed, from what I understand, will be staying the same. Just make it look a little bit different in about a month or so. But anyway, for all of us here at Black Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next week. Enjoy March Madness. Hopefully we may have some more basketball to talk about. We'll see.